They say the dead tell no tales, but what happens when the dead man walks back into his own funeral? Adrian Vance was supposed to die in that jet explosion. His wife had already claimed his empire. His best friend had already taken his throne. But the maid, the quiet, invisible woman no one ever looked at twice, she knew the truth. And when Adrian heard his wife toast to his murder through a crack in the door, he realized something terrifying. Being killed wasn't his biggest problem. Coming back to life was. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city name. I want to see how far this tale travels. The room smelled like expensive cigars and cheaper lies. Adrian Vance stood in the marble foyer of the Meridian Hotel, 30 floors above a city that feared his name, and felt his gut twist in a way it hadn't in 15 years. The meeting was wrong. He couldn't point to anything specific. The text confirming the location had come from Marcus's burner. The security sweep showed nothing unusual. The attendees list checked out, but instinct was the only religion Adrian practiced, and right now it was screaming at him to walk away. Mr. Vance. His driver, a thick-necked Pole named Gregor, shifted his weight by the elevator. They're waiting in the penthouse. Adrian checked his watch. 10:47 p.m. He was already late. Marcus Kane, his oldest friend, his right hand for 2 decades, had arranged this sit-down with the Colombians himself. Legitimate expansion opportunities, Marcus had said. A chance to move into shipping without the usual territorial bloodshed. The kind of deal that turned empires into dynasties. So why did it feel like a noose tightening? Tell them I got held up, Adrian said. Traffic. Gregor blinked. Sir, they flew in from Medellin specifically. I don't care if they flew in from the fucking moon. Tell them. Adrian turned and walked back through the revolving door before Gregor could protest. Outside, the October wind bit through his Tom Ford suit. His hands were steady. They were always steady. But something cold had settled between his shoulder blades. He'd survived 18 years in a business where most men didn't see 30 by trusting his instincts more than his allies. Tonight, his instincts were telling him to go home. The private jet was fueled and waiting at Teterboro. Adrian made a call. Change of plans, he told his pilot. We're leaving in 20 minutes. Yes, sir. Destination? Adrian paused. Home was a 15,000-square-foot estate in Alpine, New Jersey. Victoria would be there, his wife of 12 years, a woman who looked like she'd been carved from ice and expensive breeding. She'd be in the study with a glass of Chateau Margaux, reading something pretentious. The thought should have comforted him. It didn't. Just get us airborne, Adrian said. I'll decide once we're up. But 23 minutes later, somewhere over Pennsylvania, Adrian changed his mind again. The feeling hadn't gone away. If anything, it had gotten worse. He told the pilot to turn around. Land at the private airstrip near his estate. Don't file a flight plan. Use the secondary approach, Adrian added, the one that comes in over the woods. The pilot knew better than to ask questions. They touched down at 1:15 a.m. on a runway that officially didn't exist, hidden in 300 acres of pine forest that Adrian had purchased through shell companies specifically for nights like this. No lights, no ground crew. Just the sound of tires on asphalt and Adrian's pulse in his ears. He left Gregor with the plane. If I'm not back in 2 hours, disappear. Sir, you hear gunshots. You disappear faster. Adrian took one of the cars from the hangar, a forgettable Honda Civic, not the Maybach, and drove the back roads to his estate. He killed the headlights a quarter-mile out and approached through the east woods, the way he used to when he was running cocaine across the Canadian border, and paranoia was a survival skill, not a personality flaw. The house glowed through the trees, every window blazing. At 1:30 in the morning, Adrian parked in a copse of birch trees and approached on foot. The estate was supposed to be quiet tonight. He told Victoria he'd be gone for 3 days. The staff had been given the week off except for the bare minimum. Just the overnight security rotation and Lena, the new housemaid Victoria had hired 6 months ago. Mousy little thing? Dark hair, dark eyes, moved through rooms like she was apologizing for taking up space. But the house wasn't quiet. Adrian heard the music first, jazz drifting through the October air, then voices, laughter. He moved through the formal gardens like a ghost, past the fountain Victoria had imported from Tuscany, around the edge of the reflecting pool. The French doors to the main sitting room were open. Light spilled onto the terrace. Adrian pressed himself against the stone wall and looked. His wife stood in the center of the room wearing a red dress he'd never seen before. A bottle of Dom Perignon, the 96, the one Adrian had been saving for their anniversary, sat open on the table. And next to Victoria, holding a champagne flute and laughing like he'd just heard the funniest joke of his life, was Marcus Kane, Adrian's oldest friend, his brother in everything but blood. Marcus had his hand on Victoria's waist. The cold feeling in Adrian's spine turned to ice. He was about to step forward, about to kick those French doors open and demand answers that would probably come with bullets when a hand closed over his mouth from behind. Adrian's training kicked in. He grabbed the wrist, twisted, ready to snap bone. "Don't!" The voice was female, quiet. "If you make a sound, you're dead." Adrian spun. The mousy housemaid stood behind him in the shadows. Lena. Except she didn't look mousy anymore. Her dark eyes were sharp, alert. She had a Glock 19 in her other hand. Not pointed at him, but not exactly pointed away either. "What the fuck?" "Shut up and listen," Lena hissed. "They think you're dead. They think the plane went down over Pennsylvania. If you walk in there right now, they'll know it didn't, and you'll be dead for real before you reach the door." Adrian stared at her. "What plane?" "Yours. They sabotaged it. Fuel line, probably. Or the hydraulics. I don't know the details, I just heard them talking. You were supposed to blow up somewhere over the Poconos an hour ago." She glanced toward the house. "They've been celebrating since 11:30. The world tilted. Adrian had walked into ambushes before. He'd been shot at, stabbed, nearly killed by a car bomb in Atlantic City. But he'd always seen it coming. He'd always known who to shoot back at. This was different. "You're lying," he said, but the words came out weak. "Listen," Lena said. She didn't move, didn't point, just waited. Adrian turned back to the window, focused. The jazz had changed to something slower. Coltrane, maybe. Marcus refilled Victoria's glass. They were talking, but Adrian couldn't hear through the glass. Then Victoria raised her champagne flute. Adrian read her lips. "To freedom." Marcus touched his glass to hers. His mouth moved. "To the future." They drank. And then Victoria laughed. Really laughed, the kind of uninhibited sound Adrian hadn't heard from her in years, and said something that made Marcus pull her close. Adrian couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. He knew his wife's body language. He'd been married to her for 12 years. She kissed Marcus like she'd been waiting her whole life to do it. Adrian felt something break inside his chest, not his heart that had calcified years ago in this business, but something deeper, the foundation he'd built his entire world on. The idea that some things were sacred, that some people were untouchable. "How long?" His voice sounded like gravel. "I don't know," Lena said. "Months, at least. Maybe years." "And you knew?" "I suspected. I confirmed it 3 weeks ago when I found the offshore account transfers. Victoria's been moving money out since August. Marcus has been consolidating support with your lieutenants. They were planning this, Mr. Vance. They've been planning it for a long time." Adrian's hands curled into fists. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I'm not on your side." He turned, stared at her. Lena, or whoever she really was, met his gaze without flinching. "My name isn't Lena Hale. It's Elena Vale. And you killed my father." The name hit Adrian like a bullet. Vale. Thomas Vale. Small-time operator out of Newark who'd tried to muscle into Adrian's North Jersey roots 7 years ago. Adrian had made an example of him. Public. Brutal. The kind of message that kept other small-timers from getting ideas. He'd left a widow and a daughter. "You're here for revenge," Adrian said slowly. "I was." Elena didn't lower the gun. "I spent 6 months getting hired. 6 months working my way into this house, learning your schedule, figuring out where you were vulnerable. I was going to kill you myself. Slow. Make it hurt. So why warn me? Because you're not my enemy." Her jaw tightened. "They are." Inside, Marcus had Victoria pressed against the mahogany desk. The champagne was forgotten. They weren't celebrating anymore. They were past that. Adrian watched his wife arch her back, watched Marcus's hands tangle in her hair, and felt nothing. No rage, no grief. just the cold, calculating clarity that had kept him alive this long. "How many are in the house?" he asked. "4 guards. 2 at the front gate, 2 roaming the perimeter. All Marcus's men. He rotated your people out this afternoon, told them you'd authorized a security change. Where's my regular team? Dead, probably, or paid off." Elena tilted her head. "You really didn't see this coming?" Adrian didn't answer. He was already running scenarios. 4 armed men, all loyal to Marcus. Victoria and Marcus inside. No backup. No weapons, except whatever Elena had on her and whatever he could improvise. The smart play was to run, disappear. Live to fight another day. But Adrian Vance hadn't built an empire by making the smart play. "What do you want?" he asked Elena. "I want them to burn." "Then we're on the same side tonight." Elena studied him for a long moment. Then she lowered the gun. "There's a tunnel. Wine cellar to the woods. Your grandfather built it during Prohibition." "I know about the tunnel." "Then you know it's the only way out that doesn't get you shot." Adrian looked back at the house one more time. Victoria had pulled away from Marcus. She was fixing her dress, laughing at something, reaching for her champagne. Marcus said something that made her swat his arm playfully. They looked happy. They looked like people who'd gotten away with murder. "I need evidence," Adrian said. "Proof they did this. Otherwise, it's just my word against theirs, and I'm supposed to be dead." "I have proof." Elena pulled a flash drive from her pocket. Bank transfers, emails, audio recordings of them planning the sabotage. Everything you need to bury them. "How did you—" "Because I've been living in your house for 6 months, Mr. Vance. I see everything. I hear everything. Nobody notices the maid." Adrian took the flash drive. Their fingers brushed. Her hands were steady. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Elena's expression hardened. "Because my father was a lot of things, but he didn't deserve to die the way you killed him. And because watching you get betrayed by the people you trusted most?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's better revenge than anything I could have planned myself." "Fair enough." "The tunnel," Adrian said. Elena led him around the back of the estate, past the pool house, to a stone outbuilding that officially stored gardening equipment. Inside, behind a false wall lined with rusted rakes and bags of mulch, was a steel door with a mechanical lock. Elena entered the code. Adrian's birthday, which meant Victoria had known about the tunnel and hadn't bothered changing the access, and the door swung open onto darkness. "Stay close," Elena said. "It's a 1/4 mile to the exit." The tunnel was exactly as Adrian remembered from the one time his grandfather had shown it to him as a kid. Low ceiling, brick walls slick with moisture, the smell of earth and old concrete. Elena moved through it like she'd walked it before, which she probably had. Adrian followed, his mind already 3 steps ahead. Marcus and Victoria thought he was dead. That gave him an advantage. They'd be vulnerable, cocky. They'd make mistakes. But he needed more than mistakes. He needed to know how deep this went. "Who else is involved?" he asked. "Your entire inner circle. Marcus has been working them for months. Promises of territory, better splits, more autonomy. Most of them think they're getting a promotion when you're gone. Names: Castellano, Rodriguez, that Irish prick from Boston, Doyle. They're all in." Elena glanced back at him. "You're going to lose about 60% of your operation when this comes out." 60%. Adrian had spent 18 years building this empire. Started with nothing but a duffel bag of product and a willingness to do things other men wouldn't. Clawed his way up through blood and strategy and ruthless, calculated violence. He'd crushed rivals, bought politicians, turned a street-level drug operation into a multi-state criminal enterprise that touched everything from narcotics to real estate to legitimate shipping. And his wife and best friend had stolen it in 6 months. "I'll get it back," Adrian said. "How?" "You're one man. You're officially dead. You have no money, no army, no leverage." "I have you." Elena stopped, turned. "I'm not your soldier." "No, but you want them to suffer as much as I do, maybe more." Adrian stepped closer. "You give me the proof. I'll give you the revenge. We both get what we want. And then what? You go back to being a crime lord and I go back to being nobody? Then you disappear. New name, new life, my money in your account. Enough to live anywhere you want, do anything you want." Elena studied him. You'd let me walk away? After what I was planning to do to you? You saved my life tonight. That buys a lot of forgiveness. I saved you because I hate them more than I hate you. That's not loyalty. I don't need loyalty, Adrian said. I need someone who wants to see them bleed. Elena considered this. Then she nodded once and turned back to the tunnel. They emerged in the woods 20 minutes later, 100 yards from where Adrian had parked the Civic. The night was quiet except for the wind in the pines. No alarms, no shouts. No one had noticed Adrian Vance wasn't burning in a plane wreck over Pennsylvania. Now what? Elena asked. Adrian pulled out his phone, turned it off. Anything connected to the network was a liability now. He'd need to go dark, completely off-grid. Marcus would have people looking once the plane didn't show up in the wreckage they were expecting. Now I disappear, Adrian said. Officially, I'm dead. We keep it that way. For how long? As long as it takes. Elena frowned. Takes to do what? Adrian looked back toward the estate. The lights were still on. Somewhere in there, his wife and his best friend were probably in bed now, celebrating a murder they thought they'd gotten away with. To plan a funeral, Adrian said. But they drove in silence. Adrian headed west on back roads, keeping the speedometer exactly at the limit, hands steady on the wheel. Elena sat in the passenger seat with the Glock in her lap, watching the dark trees blur past. Neither of them spoke. There wasn't much to say. They'd both just had their worlds turned inside out. Words seemed pointless. At a gas station outside Hackensack, Adrian ditched the Civic in a long-term parking lot and stole a Camry with dealer plates. He'd learned to hotwire cars when he was 14, back when stealing was the only skill he had. Muscle memory took over. 30 seconds, and they were moving again. Where are we going? Elena asked. Somewhere Marcus doesn't know about. I thought he knew everything about you. He knows everything I let him know. Adrian turned north onto Route 17. I've been in this business long enough to keep a few secrets. The safe house was in Nyack, buried in a neighborhood of modest colonials and overgrown yards where nobody looked twice at strangers. Adrian had bought it under a shell company 8 years ago and never told anyone, not even Victoria. It was his insurance policy. The place he'd run to if everything went wrong. Everything had gone wrong. He parked 2 blocks away and they walked the rest. The house was dark, exactly as he'd left it 3 months ago when he'd last checked in. Adrian unlocked the back door and they stepped into a kitchen that smelled like stale air and old coffee. There's a laptop in the office, Adrian said. Let's see what you've got. Elena handed him the flash drive. Adrian booted up the computer, offline, no network connection, and plugged in the drive. Folders appeared, dozens of them. Elena hadn't been exaggerating. She'd documented everything. Bank statements showing Victoria transferring money to accounts in the Caymans. Emails between Marcus and Castellano discussing the transition. Audio files of phone calls where Marcus laid out the plan. Sabotage the plane, stage a memorial, consolidate power before anyone realized what had happened. And there, in a folder labeled Insurance, was a video. Adrian clicked it. The footage was grainy, shot from a hidden camera. Marcus and Victoria in Adrian's study, his private office, the one room in the house that was supposed to be sacred. Victoria was sitting on the edge of the desk. Marcus was standing in front of her. They were both drinking whiskey. When? Victoria's voice, tinny through the laptop speakers. Thursday night. He's meeting the Colombians at the Meridian. I'll make sure he takes the jet home after. And if he doesn't? He will. I know how his mind works. He'll want to get back, check in, make sure everything's running smooth. He's paranoid like that. Victoria smiled. That's what I love about him. So predictable. Was, Victoria agreed. She leaned forward. And after? After, we move fast. I've got Doyle ready to handle Boston. Castellano's got New York locked down. Rodriguez is on standby for Atlantic City. By the time anyone realizes what happened, we'll control 70% of the operation. And the rest? The rest fall in line or they disappear. Victoria kissed him, slow, deliberate. When she pulled back, she was smiling. I should have done this years ago. You weren't ready years ago. No, but I'm ready now. The video ended. Adrian stared at the black screen. His hands were still steady, But something hot and vicious was building behind his ribs. Not rage. Rage was sloppy. This was colder, sharper. "When did you record this?" he asked. 2 weeks ago. They meet in your study every Tuesday when you're out. Elena leaned against the doorframe. Sometimes they just talk. Sometimes they do other things. Adrian didn't need details. He closed the laptop. This is enough. This buries them. So what's the plan? Go to the cops? Adrian laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. The cops are on Marcus's payroll, half the department anyway, and the ones who aren't wouldn't touch this with a hazmat suit. Then what? Then I do what I should have done a long time ago. Adrian stood. I stopped trusting anyone. Elena raised an eyebrow. Including me? Especially you. Smart. Adrian walked to the window, looked out at the quiet street. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably fielding calls about a missing plane, pretending to be concerned, organizing search parties, playing the devastated friend. By morning, the news would break. Billionaire businessman Adrian Vance, dead in private jet crash. Investigations pending. Memorial services to be announced. Marcus would inherit the empire by default. Victoria would play the grieving widow. And everyone who'd ever feared Adrian's name would start making new alliances, new plans. Unless Adrian came back from the dead. I need to stay gone, he said quietly. Officially dead. If Marcus thinks I survived, he'll come after me with everything he's got. So you're just going to hide? No. Adrian turned. I'm going to let them think they won. Let them get comfortable. Let them make mistakes. And then? And then I'm going to take everything back. Elena crossed her arms. You keep saying that like it's simple. It's not simple. It's necessary. You're one man against an army. I've been worse odds. When? Adrian didn't answer. He walked past her, back to the kitchen, and started pulling supplies from the cabinets. Canned food, bottled water, a first aid kit, the basics. Enough to last a week if they rationed. Elena followed. You're serious about this? Did I look like I was joking? You look like a man who just watched his entire life explode. Then I look exactly how I feel. He stopped, set down the cans, turned to face her. Why are you still here? He asked. Elena blinked. What? You got your revenge. You watched me lose everything. You could walk out that door right now and I couldn't stop you. You'd try. Maybe, but you're armed and I'm not, so odds are in your favor. Adrian leaned against the counter. So why are you still here? Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, because this isn't finished. Your father's dead. I can't bring him back. I don't want him back. I want them to pay. They will. Not enough. Elena's eyes hardened. You're going to take back your empire, fine. But what happens to them? They get demoted? They lose some money? That's not justice. What do you want? Public execution? I want them to feel what you're feeling right now. I want them to lose everything. I want them to know with absolute certainty that they destroyed themselves. Adrian studied her. You're angrier than I am. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just honest about it. Fair point. All right, Adrian said. You want to see this through, you're in, but we do this my way. No improvising, no heroics, no revenge fantasies that get us both killed. I can live with that. Can you take orders? Elena smiled thinly. Can you give them without sounding like a tyrant? Probably not. Then we're going to have problems. Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. Yeah, probably. Us on. They spent the next 3 days planning. Adrian had contacts, people Marcus didn't know about, people who owed favors that predated his partnership with Marcus. Old connections from before he'd built the empire. Street-level operators who remembered when Adrian Vance was just a hungry kid with a duffel bag and a death wish. Elena had intelligence. 6 months of living in Adrian's house had given her access to things Marcus didn't know she'd seen. Security codes, safe combinations, the names of mistresses and hidden accounts. She'd been planning to use it all to destroy Adrian. Now she was using it to save him. It was ironic in a way that neither of them acknowledged. On the 4th day, the news broke. Adrian watched it on the grainy TV in the safe house, a stern-faced anchor reading from a teleprompter. Authorities have confirmed that the wreckage of a private jet found in rural Pennsylvania belongs to Adrian Vance, the controversial businessman whose empire has long been the subject of federal investigations. They showed photos. Adrian in a tuxedo at some charity function, Victoria on his arm looking like she'd been born to wealth. Marcus in the background, always in the background, the loyal friend. The anchor continued. No survivors have been found. Investigators believe the crash was caused by mechanical failure, though the NTSB has not ruled out other possibilities. Marcus appeared on screen. A press conference. He looked devastated. Tie slightly loosened, eyes red-rimmed like he'd been crying. Adrian was more than a friend, Marcus said, voice cracking. He was a brother. This loss it's unimaginable. Adrian watched his best friend lie to the world and felt nothing. Victoria was next. Black dress, understated jewelry, the perfect picture of a grieving widow. She didn't say much, just thanked people for their support, asked for privacy, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. She was good. Adrian had to give her that. She was very good. When's the funeral? Elena asked. 3 days. They're doing it at the Cathedral of St. Matthew, big public event. Everyone who's anyone in the underworld will be there. You're going. It wasn't a question. I'm going, Adrian confirmed. That's insane. They'll see you. That's the point. Elena stared at him. You want to walk into your own funeral and just, what, announce you're alive? They'll kill you before you make it down the aisle. No, they won't. Why not? Because I won't be alone. Adrian turned off the TV, stood, looked at Elena. You said you wanted them to feel what I'm feeling right now. You wanted them to lose everything. Yes. Then here's how we do it. He laid out the plan. It was audacious, reckless. The kind of move that would either cement Adrian's legend or get them both killed. Elena listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not the thin, bitter smile she'd been wearing for days. A real one. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard, she said. That's not a no. No, it's not. You're in? Elena extended her hand. I'm in. They shook on it. And in that moment, Adrian Vance, officially dead, unofficially very much alive, began planning his resurrection. The first person Adrian contacted was a man named Vincent Salazar, who ran a chop shop in Patterson and owed Adrian his life from a thing that happened in 2011 involving the Russian mob and a very bad misunderstanding about stolen BMWs. Vincent didn't ask questions when Adrian called from a burner phone at 2 a.m. He just said, where and when, and showed up 6 hours later with a duffel bag full of untraceable weapons and a van with plates that wouldn't ping any database. You look like shit, Vincent said when he saw Adrian. I'm dead. What'd you expect? Vincent grunted. He was 60, built like a fire hydrant, with hands that could crush a man's windpipe and had. He glanced at Elena, who was standing by the window with her Glock visible on her hip. Who's she? The reason I'm not actually dead. She with you or against you? Haven't decided yet, Elena said without turning around. Vincent looked at Adrian. I like her. They worked out of the safe house, spreading maps and floor plans across the kitchen table like they were planning a heist instead of a funeral. The Cathedral of St. Matthew was old money, old architecture, the kind of place where mob bosses got married and their enemies got eulogized. Adrian had been there exactly twice, once for a wedding, once for a funeral. Both times he'd walked out alive. He intended to keep that streak going. Security will be tight, Vincent said, tapping the blueprint. Marcus isn't stupid. He'll have people at every entrance, probably metal detectors, definitely eyes on the crowd. He's also arrogant, Adrian said. He thinks I'm dead. He thinks he won. Arrogance gets people killed. That's what I'm counting on. Elena joined them at the table. She'd been quiet for the past hour, reading through the guest list Marcus's people had leaked to the press. It was a who's who of the criminal underworld. Capos from 5 families, Irish bosses from Boston, the Colombians Marcus had been courting, even a few legitimate businessmen who'd done deals with Adrian over the years and pretended not to know where the money came from. 200 people, Elena said, maybe more, and every single one of them thinks you're dead. Good. Good. Adrian, if this goes wrong, we're not walking out. We're getting carried out. Then we don't let it go wrong. Vincent pulled a cigarette from his pocket, caught Adrian's look, and put it back. You want to walk into a room full of killers and announce you're alive. That's the plan. Part of it. What's the other part? Adrian slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of the evidence Elena had collected. Bank transfers, emails, audio transcripts. Everything Marcus and Victoria had done laid out in black and white. We exposed them, Adrian said, in front of everyone. No warnings, no private meetings. We make it public. We make it undeniable. Vincent whistled low. You're going to burn them alive. They tried to burn me first. Yeah, but they failed. You do this, there's no coming back from it. For any of you. I don't want to come back from it, Adrian said. I want to end it. Elena was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. And after? When the Empire's yours again and Marcus and Victoria are gone, what then? Then I rebuild, clean house, cut out the rot. You think it's that simple? You think the people who followed Marcus are just going to fall in line because you showed up at a funeral? No? I think half of them will try to kill me. The other half will wait to see who wins before they pick a side. Adrian leaned back in his chair. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today's problem is staying alive long enough to get through the door. Vincent started sketching on a notepad. You'll need a distraction, something big enough to pull security's attention, but not so big it gets you shot on sight. I've got that covered. Yeah, what? Adrian told him. Vincent stopped sketching, looked up. You're out of your mind. Probably. That's not a compliment. Didn't take it as one. They spent the next 2 days gathering what they needed. Vincent called in favors, pulled strings, acquired things that couldn't be bought legally and wouldn't be traced illegally. Elena worked her contacts, people she'd cultivated during her 6 months as a maid, low-level players who saw her as harmless and talked too freely around her. She came back with schedules, security rotations, the name of the florist doing the funeral arrangements. Why do we need the florist? Vincent asked. Because flowers are how we get the equipment inside, Elena said. Large arrangements, multiple deliveries, no one looks twice. Vincent raised an eyebrow at Adrian. Where'd you find her? She found me. Lucky you. That's debatable. The night before the funeral, Adrian stood in the bathroom of the safe house and stared at himself in the mirror. He looked older than he remembered, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a year ago, gray creeping into his temples. The business had aged him, or maybe it was the betrayal. Hard to tell. Elena appeared in the doorway behind him. Second thoughts? Always. But you're doing it anyway. Yeah. She leaned against the frame. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why'd you kill my father? Adrian turned, looked at her directly. You read the file. You know why. I know the official reason. He was moving in on your territory. He wouldn't back down. You made an example. Elena's voice was flat. But there's always more to it. There's always something the file doesn't say. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Your father shot one of my guys. Kid named Danny Reeves, 23 years old, trying to work his way up. Your father put 2 bullets in his chest over a street corner that brought in maybe $5,000 a month. Danny died in the hospital. He had a sister who depended on him. Elena's expression didn't change. So you killed him for revenge. I killed him because if I didn't, every small-timer in North Jersey would think they could shoot my people and walk away. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to be the truth. Elena studied him. You ever regret it? Regret killing him? No. Adrian turned back to the mirror. Regret how I did it? Sometimes. Why? Because I was angrier than I should have been. And when you're angry, you make mistakes. Like what? Like not checking to see if he had a family, like not caring what happened to them after. Adrian met her eyes in the reflection. Like creating you. Elena was quiet. Then she said, You know I could still kill you. Yeah. Even after all this? Yeah. You're not worried? If you were going to kill me, you would have done it already. You had a dozen chances in that tunnel alone. Adrian dried his hands on a towel. You're here because you want to see them suffer more than you want me dead. I can live with that. For now. For now, Adrian agreed. They stood there in silence. Then Elena said, "My father wasn't a good man. I know that. He drank, he gambled, he hit my mother, but he was still my father. I know. And you took him from me. I know. So when this is over, when Marcus and Victoria are buried and your empire's back and everything's settled, we're done. You and me. Whatever this partnership is, it ends." Adrian nodded. "Deal." Elena pushed off the doorframe, started to walk away, then stopped. "For what it's worth," she said without turning around, "I think Danny Reeves was lucky to have someone like you go after his killer. Most people in this life don't get that." She left before Adrian could respond. The morning of the funeral dawned cold and gray. Adrian dressed in a suit Vincent had acquired, black, expensive, anonymous. He looked like a mourner. He looked like someone who belonged. That was the point. Elena wore a dark dress and a hat with a veil that covered half her face. She looked like a widow. She looked devastated. She'd practiced the expression in the mirror until it was perfect. "Remember the plan," Adrian said as they drove toward the city in Vincent's van. "You go in first. Blend with the crowd. I wait for the signal. And if something goes wrong, then we improvise." "I thought you said no improvising." "I lied." Elena smiled despite herself. "You're a real son of a bitch. You know that? It's been mentioned." Vincent dropped them 3 blocks from the cathedral. "You got 2 hours. After that, every cop in the city is going to be looking for you." 2 hours is plenty. 2 hours is suicide. "Then it's a good thing I'm already dead." Vincent shook his head but didn't argue. He handed Adrian an earpiece, small, nearly invisible. "Channel 4. I'll be listening. If you hear gunshots, drive away." "The hell I will." "Vincent, you don't get to play hero and tell me to run. We're in this together or not at all." Adrian looked at the old man. 20 years he'd known him, 20 years of favors and trust, and the kind of loyalty you couldn't buy. Marcus had been his friend for 2 decades. Vincent had been his ally for just as long. One had betrayed him. The other was risking his life. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly. Vincent waved him off. "Just don't get killed. I'm too old to break in a new boss." Elena went in first. She joined the crowd filtering through the cathedral's main entrance. Women in black, men in dark suits, everyone wearing the same expression of somber respect. Some of them were genuinely sad. Most of them were calculating what Adrian's death meant for their own operations. That was the business. Grief was a luxury. Power was currency. Adrian watched from across the street, hidden behind the tinted windows of a parked sedan Vincent had positioned that morning. He saw Marcus arrive in a black limousine flanked by security, saw Victoria step out behind him, elegant in mourning, playing her part flawlessly. They walked into the cathedral together, and the crowd parted for them like water. "They're inside," Elena's voice came through the earpiece. "Main floor is packed. Castellano's here. Doyle, Rodriguez, all of them." "Security?" 6 visible. Probably more in the back. Metal detectors at the entrance. "Good thing I'm not going through the entrance." Adrian slipped out of the sedan and moved through the alley behind the cathedral. The delivery entrance was unlocked. Elena had made sure of that the night before when she'd bribed the custodian with $500 and a story about needing to leave flowers for her dead husband. The custodian hadn't asked questions. Inside, the cathedral was all soaring ceilings and stained glass. Adrian moved through the back corridors, past the sacristy, toward the main hall. He could hear the organ playing, somber hymns, the kind of music that made death feel noble instead of brutal. He stopped at a door that led to the side balcony, pulled out his phone, the burner, not his real one. Checked the time. 11:45. In 15 minutes, the service would begin. Marcus would give a eulogy. Victoria would cry on cue. And Adrian Vance would step out of the grave. "I'm in position," he said into the earpiece. "Copy," Elena replied. "They're about to start." Adrian waited. Through the crack in the door, he could see the main hall filling up. 200 people, maybe more. Every major player in the East Coast underworld. Every lieutenant who'd ever sworn loyalty to Adrian. Every rival who'd ever feared him. And at the front, standing beside a closed casket that supposedly held Adrian's remains, Marcus Kane prepared to deliver his lies. Marcus started speaking. His voice carried through the cathedral, amplified by microphone but still managing to sound choked with emotion. He talked about friendship, about loyalty, about how Adrian Vance had been a man of vision and strength. He talked about legacy. He didn't mention the sabotaged plane. He didn't mention the stolen empire. He didn't mention sleeping with Adrian's wife. He was very convincing. Adrian listened and felt that cold clarity settle deeper into his bones. At exactly noon, Marcus paused. He looked out at the crowd. Before we continue, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence. For Adrian. For everything he built. For everything we've lost. 200 heads bowed. The cathedral fell silent, and Adrian Vance pushed open the door and walked onto the balcony. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, visible to everyone below, alive and solid, and very much not dead. The silence stretched. Then someone gasped, then someone else. And then the entire cathedral erupted. People shouted, jumped to their feet. Some reached for weapons before remembering where they were. Marcus spun toward the balcony, his face going white. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. For one perfect moment, every single person in that room believed they were seeing a ghost. Adrian let them stare, let the shock sink in. Then he spoke, his voice cutting through the chaos without needing a microphone. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Traffic was murder." Nobody laughed. They were too stunned. Adrian descended the stairs slowly, deliberately. Every eye tracked him. Security moved toward him, but Marcus held up a hand, stopped them. He was smart enough to know that shooting Adrian in front of 200 witnesses would destroy whatever credibility he'd built. "Adrian," Marcus said. His voice was steady, but his face betrayed him. Everyone thought, I was dead. Yeah, I heard." Adrian reached the main floor, walked toward the casket. "Nice turnout. You really outdid yourself. What happened? The plane?" "The plane exploded. Just like you planned." Adrian turned to face the crowd. "Except I wasn't on it." Marcus's expression flickered, just for a second. But Adrian saw it. Everyone saw it. "Adrian, I don't know what you think. I think you sabotaged my plane. I think you've been stealing my empire for the past 6 months. I think you and my wife have been planning my murder since August." Adrian's voice was calm, conversational, and I think everyone in this room needs to hear the proof. He nodded toward the balcony. Elena appeared. She was holding a laptop. She moved to the front of the cathedral where a projector had been set up for the memorial slideshow. Photos of Adrian's life, carefully curated by Victoria to make him look like a beloved philanthropist instead of a criminal. Elena plugged in the laptop. The projector hummed to life. And suddenly, the stained glass saints were watching Marcus and Victoria plot Adrian's death. The audio from Elena's recording filled the cathedral. Marcus's voice. "Thursday night, he's meeting the Colombians at the Meridian. I'll make sure he takes the jet home after." Victoria's voice. "And if he doesn't?" "He will. I know how his mind works." The crowd was frozen. Every face turned toward the projection, watching, listening. The video shifted. Bank transfers appeared. Millions of dollars moving from Adrian's accounts to offshore holdings in Victoria's name. Emails between Marcus and the lieutenants, discussing percentages and territories and how to divide the empire once Adrian was gone. Then came the footage from the study. Marcus and Victoria kissing. Victoria's laugh. Her voice, "I should have done this years ago." Marcus's reply, "You weren't ready years ago." The projection ended. The cathedral was silent again. But this time it was a different kind of silence. The kind that came before violence. Marcus tried to speak. It's fabricated, obviously. Someone's trying to frame me." Adrian stepped closer. "Someone's trying to frame you by using footage from my house, my study, your voice, her face?" He gestured to Victoria, who looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. "That's some impressive fabrication." Castellano stood up from his pew. He was a thick man with a thick accent and a reputation for pragmatism. "Adrian, you're saying Marcus tried to kill you?" "I'm saying Marcus succeeded. I was supposed to be in that casket." Adrian pointed to the closed coffin. "But I came home early, and I heard everything." Doyle, the Irish boss, was staring at Marcus like he'd just met a stranger. "You sabotaged his plane?" Marcus's jaw tightened. Don't listen to him. He's desperate. He's trying to turn you against me because he knows his time is over. My time? Adrian laughed. It was a harsh sound. You spent 2 decades watching my back, Marcus. You were the one person I trusted completely, and you threw it away for what? My wife? My money? Both? You're weak, Marcus said suddenly. The pretense dropped. The mask came off. You've been weak for years. Too cautious. Too scared to expand. I built this empire as much as you did, and you treated me like hired help. You were my partner. I was your lieutenant. There's a difference. Marcus stepped forward. Everything I did for this organization. You were holding us back. Someone had to take control. By killing me. By removing an obstacle. The crowd shifted. Guns appeared, not pointed yet, but visible. Ready. The cathedral had become a powder keg. Adrian kept his voice level. You want to do this here, in front of everyone? You started it. No, you started it when you sabotaged my plane. I'm just finishing it. Marcus moved fast, faster than Adrian expected. He pulled a Beretta from his jacket and aimed it at Adrian's chest. Every gun in the room came up. Some pointed at Marcus, some pointed at Adrian, some pointed at nothing in particular, their owners waiting to see which side would win before committing. Put it down, Adrian said quietly. Make me. Marcus, think about what you're doing. I am thinking. I'm thinking that you're dead either way. Either you die now, in front of everyone, or you die later quietly, and I tell them you went crazy, started making accusations, lost your mind. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Either way, I win. No, Elena said from the balcony. You don't. She had a rifle. Adrian didn't know where she'd gotten it. Probably Vincent. Probably stashed in the cathedral during one of her flower deliveries. She was aiming it at Marcus's center mass. Shoot him and you're next, she said. Her voice was steady, professional. Marcus hesitated. That was his mistake. Elena fired. Not at Marcus. At the ceiling above him. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Plaster rained down. People screamed. Dove for cover. The carefully maintained order shattered into chaos. And in that chaos, Adrian moved. He crossed the distance between himself and Marcus in 3 strides, grabbed Marcus's wrist, twisted. The Beretta clattered to the marble floor. Adrian swept Marcus's legs out from under him, dropped him hard. Stay down, Adrian said. Marcus didn't. He rolled, reached for the gun. Adrian kicked it away. Marcus lunged at him. They went down together, grappling on the cathedral floor like street fighters instead of crime lords. Around them, the crowd was shouting. Some were trying to leave. Some were trying to decide who to shoot. Some were just watching, waiting. Castellano's voice cut through the noise. Everyone stop! He was standing on a pew, gun in the air, but not aimed at anyone. Nobody fires! Nobody moves! Slowly, the chaos settled. People stopped running. Guns lowered slightly. Everyone looked at Castellano. He pointed at Adrian and Marcus, still locked together on the floor. You too, get up, enough! Adrian shoved Marcus away and stood. His suit was torn, his knuckles were bleeding, but he was breathing. Marcus climbed to his feet. He looked at Castellano, then at the crowd, then back at Adrian. This isn't over, Marcus said. Yeah, Adrian replied. It is. He turned to the crowd. Everyone in this room just saw the proof. You heard the recordings, you saw the transfers, you know what happened. Doyle spoke up. So what do you want? Loyalty? After you disappeared and left us hanging? I didn't disappear. I was murdered. Or I was supposed to be. Adrian looked at each of them. I'm not asking for loyalty. I'm asking you to remember who built this empire, who kept you safe, who made you rich. And who do we follow now? Rodriguez asked. You, Marcus, neither? You follow whoever you think can keep you alive, Adrian said simply. That's how this business works. You pick the winning side and you hope you picked right. Silence. Then Castellano said, I pick Adrian. Doyle nodded slowly. Me too. Rodriguez looked at Marcus, then at Adrian. You got my support, for now. One by one, the lieutenants declared themselves. Some for Adrian, some stayed silent. A few, Marcus's inner circle, the ones who'd helped plan the coup, backed toward the exits. Marcus watched his support collapse in real time. Victoria tried to run. She made it exactly 3 steps before Elena descended from the balcony and blocked her path. "Sit down," Elena said. Victoria's eyes flashed. "You're the maid." "No, I was the maid. Now I'm the person who decides whether you leave this cathedral alive." "You can't." "I absolutely can." Elena gestured to an empty pew. "Sit." Victoria sat. Adrian walked over to Marcus, his former friend, his would-be killer. "You had everything," Adrian said quietly. "You were my brother. Why wasn't that enough?" Marcus's laugh was bitter. "Because brothers don't get empires. Brothers get scraps. I would have shared it with you." "I didn't want you to share. I wanted you gone." Adrian nodded slowly. "Then you got what you wanted. I'm gone. The old Adrian Vance died in that plane. What comes next is something different." "You're going to kill me." "No." Adrian stepped back. "I'm going to do something worse." He turned to Castellano. "Spread the word. Marcus Kane and Victoria Vance are stripped of rank, wealth, and protection. They're nobody. Anyone who helps them answers to me." Castellano nodded. "Consider it done." Marcus's face went pale. "You're exiling us?" "I'm erasing you. By tomorrow, every account you have access to will be frozen. Every property in your name will be seized. Every favor you're owed will be called in and denied. You'll have nothing. You'll be nothing." "That's death." "No, death is quick. This is justice." Adrian looked at Victoria. "Both of you will spend the rest of your lives knowing you had everything and threw it away. You'll work. You'll struggle. You'll remember what it was like to have power, and you'll never taste it again." Victoria was crying now, real tears, not the practiced kind she'd shown earlier. "Please," she whispered. "Adrian, please. You don't get to say my name anymore." He walked past her, past Marcus, past the casket that should have held his body. Elena fell into step beside him. They walked out of the cathedral together. Behind them, the underworld watched in stunned silence as Adrian Vance, dead man walking, king returned, disappeared into the daylight. Vincent was waiting in the van 2 blocks away. He didn't ask how it went. He just drove. "Where to?" he asked after a few minutes. Adrian looked at Elena. She looked back. "Somewhere quiet," Adrian said. "We've got work to do." Because the funeral was over. The resurrection was complete. Now came the harder part. Rebuilding an empire from ashes and trust nobody. The safe house felt smaller after the cathedral. 3 people and the weight of what they'd just done made the walls close in. Vincent poured whiskey into 3 glasses without asking if anyone wanted it. They all drank in silence. "That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen," Vincent said finally. "And I once watched a guy try to rob a police station." Adrian set down his glass. "We're alive." "Barely." "Barely counts." Elena was at the window again, watching the street like she expected Marcus to come crashing through with an army. She probably wasn't wrong to think it. Just because Adrian had humiliated him in front of the entire underworld didn't mean Marcus would accept defeat. Men like him didn't know how to quit. They only knew how to escalate. "He'll come for us," she said. "Let him try." Adrian loosened his tie. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving behind the familiar ache of exhaustion. "We've got leverage he doesn't. We had surprise. That's gone now. Next time he'll be ready." "There won't be a next time." Adrian pulled out his phone, his real one this time, not the burner. 17 missed calls, 23 texts. The underworld was very interested in talking to the dead man who'd crashed his own funeral. He started making calls. The first was to Castellano. The phone rang twice before the older man picked up. "Adrian, wasn't sure you'd make it out. I'm harder to kill than people think." "So I'm learning." Castellano's voice was cautious. Respectful, but cautious. "What do you need?" "Information. How many of Marcus's people are still loyal to him?" "Honestly? Maybe a dozen. His inner circle, the ones who had the most to gain from your death. Everyone else is backing away fast. Nobody wants to be associated with a failed coup. And the territories? Still yours. For now. But Adrian, you need to understand. People are scared. You disappeared, came back, exposed a conspiracy. That's a lot of instability. Markets hate instability." Markets will adjust. Maybe. Or maybe someone else decides this is their chance to make a move. Castellano paused. You need to show strength, fast, before the vultures start circling. Adrian closed his eyes. I know. And you need to deal with Marcus. Exile is fine for the theater of it, but leaving him alive is a mistake. He's not a threat anymore. He's always a threat. Men like him don't just fade away. Then I'll handle it. When? When I'm ready. Castellano sighed. You always were stubborn. All right, you need muscle. You call me. I owe you that much. I'll remember. Adrian hung up and immediately dialed Rodriguez. Then Doyle. Then a half-dozen other lieutenants who'd sworn loyalty in the cathedral but might be reconsidering now that the shock had worn off. Same conversation, different voices. Everyone wanted reassurance. Everyone wanted to know the plan. Adrian gave them the same answer each time. Trust me, I'll have this locked down in 48 hours. It was a lie. He had no idea how long it would take. But confidence was currency in this business, and right now Adrian needed everyone to believe he was in control even if he wasn't. Elena brought him coffee at some point. He didn't remember asking for it. She set it down next to his phone and said, You can't call your way back to power. No, but I can keep them from jumping ship while I figure out what comes next. And what does come next? Adrian looked up at her. She was still in the black dress from the funeral, but she'd taken off the hat and veil. Her hair was pulled back, severe. She looked tired. They all did. I dismantle what Marcus built, Adrian said. I find everyone who helped him. I cut them out like cancer. And then? Then I rebuild. Different structure, different rules, no more blind loyalty. No more assuming the people closest to you won't put a knife in your back. Sounds lonely. Probably. Elena sat down across from him. You know, this doesn't end with Marcus in exile, right? You humiliated him, took everything. Men like him don't accept that. They come back. Not if I break him first. How? Adrian didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about the video Elena had shown, about Victoria's laugh, about 20 years of friendship burning down in a cathedral. Marcus wants power, Adrian said slowly. He wants respect. He wants to be feared. So I take that away. I make him irrelevant. I make him invisible. You already did that. No, I made him infamous. Everyone knows his name now. Everyone knows he tried to kill me and failed. That's different. Adrian leaned forward. I need him to be nothing. A footnote. Someone people forget about. Vincent snorted from across the room. Good luck with that. The man tried to steal an empire. People don't forget. They do if you give them something bigger to think about. Elena raised an eyebrow. Like what? Like the fact that Adrian Vance came back from the dead and is about to reshape the entire East Coast underworld. Adrian stood, started pacing. Marcus thought he could take what I built and run it the same way. He was wrong. The empire he wanted? It doesn't exist anymore. I'm burning it down and starting over. You're serious? Completely. Vincent whistled. That's ambitious. That's survival. The old system failed. It let Marcus get close enough to sabotage a plane. It let Victoria siphon millions without anyone noticing. It let a dozen lieutenants think they could carve up territories before my body was cold. Adrian stopped pacing. I'm done with that version of power. It's broken. I'm building something new. And what does that look like? Elena asked. I don't know yet, but it starts with cleaning house. The next morning, Adrian held court in the back room of a restaurant in Hoboken that had been laundering money for him since 2009. The owner, a nervous Italian named Sal, brought espresso and pastries and then made himself scarce. Smart man. One by one, the lieutenants arrived. Castellano first, always punctual. Then Doyle, reeking of cigars. Rodriguez showed up 20 minutes late with an excuse about traffic that nobody believed. Others followed. Some faces Adrian recognized. Some he didn't. By 10 a.m., there were 15 men sitting around the table. 15 voices. 15 opinions on what should happen next. Adrian let them talk for exactly 3 minutes. Then he held up a hand. Enough. The room went quiet. Here's how this works, Adrian said. I'm back. Marcus is out. Victoria is out. Anyone who helped them is out. I don't care about explanations or excuses. You were either loyal or you weren't. If you weren't, leave now and I'll let you walk. Stay, and I need to know you're committed. Nobody moved. Adrian continued. The territories stay as they are for now. No power grabs, no expansion, no trying to capitalize on the chaos. We stabilize first, grow later. And Marcus? Doyle asked. You really leaving him alive? For now. That's a mistake. It's my mistake to make. Doyle shrugged. Your funeral. Already had one of those. A few men smiled. The tension eased slightly. Rodriguez cleared his throat. Adrian, with respect, people are asking questions about the plane, about how you survived. They want to know what happened. What happened is I came home early and found my wife celebrating my death with my best friend. What happened is I spent 3 days planning how to take back what was mine. What happened is I'm standing here and Marcus isn't. Adrian's voice was cold. That's all anyone needs to know. But the details don't matter. What matters is I'm alive, I'm in control, and anyone who has a problem with that can join Marcus in exile. Rodriguez shut up. Castellano spoke next. What about the Colombians? Marcus was negotiating with them. They're expecting someone to follow through. I'll handle it. They're not going to be happy about the instability. Then they can find another partner. I'm not begging for their business. Adrian poured himself more espresso. We've survived without the Colombians before. We'll survive without them now. That's short-sighted, someone said. Adrian didn't catch who. Maybe, but I'm not making deals while my house is on fire. First we stabilize, then we expand. The meeting went on for another hour. Territory disputes, revenue splits, who controlled what percentage of which operation. The same conversations Adrian had been having for 18 years, just with different faces around the table. By noon, they'd hammered out the basics. Everyone left with orders. Everyone left knowing that Adrian Vance was back and expecting results. Everyone except Elena, who'd been standing in the corner the entire time, watching. You didn't introduce me, she said once they were alone. I didn't know what to call you. My bodyguard, my partner, the woman who saved my life? How about just Elena? They'd want to know who you are, where you came from, why I trust you. And what would you tell them? Adrian considered. The truth, that you infiltrated my house to kill me and ended up saving me instead. That you're the only person in my life who's been completely honest about wanting me dead. Elena laughed. It was a real sound, not the bitter edge she usually carried. That would go over well. Probably not. She moved to the window. Sal's restaurant overlooked the Hudson. Jersey City across the water, Manhattan beyond that. The whole metropolitan sprawl that Adrian had spent 2 decades carving into territories and profit margins. What happens to me now? Elena asked quietly. What do you want to happen? I don't know. I came here for revenge. I got it. Watching you lose everything, then take it back by destroying the people who tried to destroy you, that was better than anything I planned. She turned. But now I'm just here, in the middle of your war. And I don't know if I'm a soldier or a bystander. You're whatever you choose to be. That's not helpful. It's honest. Elena crossed her arms. You owe me. For the evidence. For the warning. For shooting the ceiling instead of Marcus. I know. So pay me. Give me enough money to disappear. New identity, new life. Somewhere far from here. Adrian nodded slowly. I can do that. 3 million in an offshore account. Passport, background, the works. You'll be gone by the end of the week. Good. But? Elena's eyes narrowed. But what? You said you want to disappear. You didn't say you want to leave. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I don't know what I want. Then stay until you figure it out. Why? What's in it for you? Maybe nothing. Maybe I just like having someone around who doesn't kiss my ass or try to kill me. Pick your motivation. You don't trust me. I don't trust anyone anymore. But at least with you, I know where I stand. Elena studied him. You're a strange man, Adrian Vance. I've been called worse. She smiled despite herself. Then the smile faded. They're going to come after you. Marcus still has people. Victoria has family. They're not going to accept exile quietly. Let them come. You can't fight everyone. Watch me. Vincent appeared in the doorway. We've got a problem. Adrian sighed. Of course we do. Marcus is making noise, called a meeting with his loyalists. Word is he's planning something. Where? Industrial Park in Newark, tonight. Warehouse he used to use for storage. Adrian exchanged a glance with Elena. How many people? Maybe 10, maybe more. Hard to say. And what's the play? He's going to what? Stage a counter coup? Who knows, but he's desperate. Desperate men do stupid things. Or dangerous things. Adrian stood. We need eyes on that meeting. Already got someone heading over. I'll let you know what they find out. Vincent left. Adrian started planning contingencies. If Marcus was rallying support, that meant he hadn't given up. That meant Adrian's humiliation in the cathedral hadn't been enough. That meant this was going to get messier before it got clean. Elena was watching him again. You're going to kill him, aren't you? If I have to. Not if, when. Adrian didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. Exile was for show, Elena said, to prove a point. But you can't leave him out there plotting. Eventually, you'll have to put him down. I know. So why wait? Because killing him makes him a martyr, makes me look weak, like I couldn't control the situation without violence. Adrian sat back down. I need him to destroy himself. I need everyone to see that he's the problem, not me. That's optimistic. That's strategic. Same thing sometimes. Vincent's contact called back 3 hours later with intel. Marcus had gathered 8 people at the warehouse, all former loyalists. All people who'd lost standing when Adrian came back. They were talking big, revenge, reclaiming power, showing Adrian he couldn't just walk back in and take over, but they weren't making moves. Not yet, just talking. Keep watching them, Adrian told Vincent. I want to know the second they do anything besides talk. That night, Adrian didn't sleep. He sat in the safe house reviewing files, tracing money, identifying every weak point in the empire Marcus had tried to steal. There were more than he'd thought. Loans to shell companies that didn't exist, payoffs to politicians who'd switched sides, gaps in the supply chain where product had gone missing. Marcus had been bleeding the empire for months, maybe longer, and Adrian hadn't noticed. That stung worse than the betrayal. Elena found him at 3 a.m., still hunched over the laptop. You need to rest. I need to fix this. You can't fix 18 years of mistakes in one night. Adrian rubbed his eyes. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there. I just didn't want to look. Why not? Because Marcus was my friend. Because I trusted him. Because admitting he'd betray me meant admitting I'd built everything on a foundation that could crumble. Adrian closed the laptop. I was naive. You were human. In this business, that's the same as being dead. Elena pulled out a chair and sat. My father used to say something about trust. He said it's like glass. Once it breaks, you can put it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. Your father was right. He was also a criminal who got himself killed. So maybe take his wisdom with a grain of salt. Despite everything, Adrian smiled. Fair point. They sat in silence for a while. Then Elena said, What happens if you can't rebuild? What if the empire's too broken? Then I walk away. You don't mean that. I do. I've spent 18 years building this thing. If it's beyond saving, I'm not going to waste another 18 trying to fix it. Adrian looked at her. There are other ways to live. Like what? You're a crime lord. That's not exactly a transferable skill set. I ran a legitimate shipping company for 6 years before I got into this. Made good money. No one tried to kill me. I could do that again. You'd be bored in a month. Probably. Elena leaned back. You're not walking away. You're too stubborn. Maybe. Definitely. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. 3 words. They're moving. Adrian stood. Marcus? He called Vincent. The old man picked up immediately. They left the warehouse 10 minutes ago. 4 cars. Headed east toward the Holland Tunnel. Toward the city. Looks like it. Where are they going? No idea, but they're armed and they're in a hurry. Adrian grabbed his jacket. Stay on them. I'm coming. Elena was already on her feet. Where are we going? To stop whatever Marcus is about to do. They took the Camry. Vincent sent updates every few minutes. Marcus's convoy was moving through lower Manhattan now, weaving through traffic like they knew exactly where they were going. He's hitting one of your operations, Elena said. Has to be. Make a statement, show he's still dangerous. Which operation? Could be anything. You've got, 20 locations in the city? Adrian's mind raced through possibilities. Warehouses, fronts, drop points. Marcus knew them all. He'd helped set up half of them. Then Adrian's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Yeah. Adrian? It was Rodriguez. His voice was tight. We've got a situation. What kind of situation? The Chelsea operation. Someone just hit it, took out 3 of my guys, grabbed the product. Cameras caught them leaving. It's Marcus. Adrian's jaw tightened. How much product? 50 keys, maybe more. And your guys? 2 dead. 1 in the hospital. Elena was watching him, reading his expression. She mouthed the word, Marcus? Adrian nodded. I'm on my way, he told Rodriguez. Secure the location. Don't let anyone in or out. He hung up and stepped on the gas. The Chelsea operation was a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood where nobody asked questions. Adrian had bought it in 2015 and used it as a distribution hub. Clean, efficient, under the radar. Or it had been until tonight. By the time they arrived, police were already there. Lights flashing, yellow tape, neighbors standing on stoops, watching the show. Adrian parked 3 blocks away. We can't get close. So what do? We wait. They sat in the car and watched the cops work. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, Rodriguez called. They're clearing out, took the bodies. I gave statements, told them it was a robbery gone wrong. Did they buy it? Do they ever? But they don't have enough to make it anything else. We're clean for now. What about the product? Gone. Marcus has it, probably already moving it. Adrian closed his eyes. 50 keys was maybe 3 million on the street. Not catastrophic, but not nothing. More importantly, it was a message. Marcus wasn't going quietly. He was fighting back. Find him, Adrian said. I don't care what it takes. Find him. Already on it. Elena spoke up after Adrian ended the call. This is escalating. Yeah. He's going to keep hitting you. Warehouses, operations, people. He's going to bleed you until you're weak enough to kill. I know. So what's the play? Adrian stared at the flashing lights, at the cops and the neighbors and the whole mess Marcus had created. We hit him back, Adrian said quietly. Harder, faster. We make him regret ever thinking he could win this. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Elena looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she said, You're going to need help, real help, not just Vincent and me. I've got 15 lieutenants. And how many of them would you trust in a fight? Adrian didn't answer. They both knew the truth. The empire he'd built was held together by fear and profit, not loyalty. Half the men who'd sworn allegiance in that restaurant would turn on him the second it benefited them. He needed something different, something Marcus couldn't buy or intimidate. He needed Elena's words from days ago, someone who wanted to see them bleed. I've got an idea, Adrian said. It's risky. Everything's risky. This is different. Tell me anyway. Adrian turned to face her. You said you wanted revenge, real revenge, watching Marcus suffer. I did. So help me destroy him, not as a bystander, as a partner. Elena blinked. What? You know things Marcus doesn't. You've been inside my house, my life, my organization. You see weaknesses he can't. You think like an outsider, which is exactly what I need right now. Adrian leaned forward. Help me finish this. And when it's done, you can walk away with enough money to live 10 lifetimes. Or I could walk away now with enough money to live 1 lifetime very comfortably. You could, but you won't. Why not? Because you're still here. Because you didn't take the first offer I made. Because watching me destroy Marcus and Victoria isn't enough anymore. You want to be part of it. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You're asking me to go to war. I'm asking you to finish what you started. And if we lose? Then we lose together. She studied his face, looking for the lie. She wouldn't find one. Adrian meant every word. Finally, Elena nodded. All right, I'm in, but not for the money. Then why? Because you're right. Watching isn't enough anymore. I want to make them burn. Adrian extended his hand. Partners? Elena shook it. Partners. And somewhere across the city, Marcus Kane was planning his next move, completely unaware that the woman who'd helped destroy him once was about to do it again. They spent the next 48 hours mapping Marcus's movements like hunters tracking prey. Elena worked the digital side, tracing phone calls and financial transactions through networks she'd built during her months as a maid. Adrian worked the street side, calling in favors from people who owed him and threatening people who didn't. Vincent coordinated between them, turning coffee into fuel and frustration into strategy. Marcus hit 2 more operations in those 2 days. A gambling house in Atlantic City, a distribution center in Newark. Both times he moved fast, took what he wanted, and disappeared before Adrian's people could respond. Both times he left bodies behind. 6 more dead. Men who'd worked for Adrian for years, reduced to casualties in a war they hadn't asked for. He's moving product through Delaware, Elena said on the 3rd morning, looking up from her laptop. Selling it cheap, undercutting your prices. He's trying to starve you out while funding his own operation. Adrian was cleaning a Glock at the kitchen table. The repetitive motion helped him think. How much has he moved? Maybe half of what he stole. Rest is probably stashed somewhere. Where? If I knew that, we'd already have it back. Fair point. Vincent walked in carrying breakfast sandwiches from a deli down the street. He tossed one to Adrian, one to Elena, kept one for himself. Eat. You both look like death. Adrian hadn't looked in a mirror in days. Didn't need to. He could feel the exhaustion in his bones, the tension in his shoulders. 3 days of running on adrenaline and coffee had a way of showing. We need to change tactics, he said, unwrapping the sandwich. Marcus is reactive. We move. He counters. We can't win like that. So what do you suggest? Elena took a bite, chewed mechanically. We're already hitting his supply lines, already freezing his accounts. What else is there? We make him come to us. Vincent raised an eyebrow. That's suicide. That's strategy. Right now we're chasing him. He controls the pace, picks his targets. We need to flip that, make him desperate enough to make a mistake. And how do we do that? Adrian set down the sandwich. We take Victoria. The room went quiet. Elena spoke first. You said you were done with her, that she was nothing. She is nothing, but Marcus doesn't see it that way. He's been sleeping with her for months, maybe longer. He risked everything for her. That's not just ambition, that's attachment. You think he'd trade for her? I think he'd do something stupid to get her back. And when he does, we'll be ready. Vincent shook his head. You're assuming he still cares. Guy's been on the run for 3 days. Maybe he's realized she's more liability than asset. Maybe, but I don't think so. Marcus isn't built like that. He doesn't cut losses. He doubles down. Elena was studying Adrian's face. This isn't about strategy. You want to hurt him. I want to end this. By using your ex-wife as bait. That's personal. Everything about this is personal. She didn't argue, just turned back to her laptop and started typing. Victoria's been staying at her sister's place in Greenwich. Low security. Probably thinks she's safe. She's not. When do we move? Tonight. They drove to Greenwich in a van Vincent had acquired through channels Adrian didn't ask about. The sister's house was in a gated community, the kind where wealth whispered instead of shouted. Big lawns, bigger houses. Security that was more for show than actual protection. Elena had cloned the gate code 2 days earlier by following a delivery truck. They slipped in at 8 p.m., parked 3 houses down, and waited. She's got a bodyguard, Elena said, watching through binoculars. Guy sitting in a Mercedes out front. Looks bored. Marcus's man? Probably. Want me to handle him? Can you do it quiet? Elena pulled a suppressed Ruger from her jacket. I can try. Try isn't good enough. Then I'll do it quiet. She slipped out of the van and disappeared into the shadows between houses. Adrian watched her go, marveling at how someone who'd been a maid 3 weeks ago moved like a trained operative. Then again, she'd spent 6 months planning to kill him. Made sense she'd learned a few skills. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Adrian was starting to worry when his earpiece crackled. "Bodyguards down," Elena's voice. "Won't wake up for a few hours." "Dead?" "Unconscious. I'm not a monster." "Debatable. You want to debate or you want to get Victoria?" Adrian and Vincent exited the van. They moved to the house's side entrance, the one Elena had unlocked. Inside, everything was cream carpets and abstract art. Money without taste. Victoria's sister had always been like that. They found Victoria in the upstairs bedroom, sitting at a vanity, looking at herself in the mirror. She was wearing a silk robe. Her hair was down. For a second, Adrian saw the woman he'd married 12 years ago. Young, beautiful, full of promise. Then she turned and he saw what she'd become. Eyes hard, mouth a thin line, the warmth that had once attracted him completely gone. "Adrian?" Her voice was steady. "No fear. Just calculation. I wondered when you'd come. Pack a bag. You're leaving." "Am I being arrested?" "Kidnapped." "There's a difference?" "Not tonight." Victoria stood slowly. She wasn't stupid. She could see Vincent blocking the door, see the gun on Adrian's hip. She knew resistance was pointless. "Marcus won't trade for me," she said. "We'll see. He's already moved on. I'm a liability to him now, just like I was to you." Adrian stepped closer. "You were never a liability. You were my wife. I trusted you. I gave you everything. You gave me half of everything. There's a difference. I gave you my loyalty. Loyalty doesn't mean much when you're sleeping with your mistresses twice a week." Adrian blinked. "What?" "Don't play innocent. The brunette from the club, the redhead from your office. You think I didn't know?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "I knew everything, Adrian, every hotel, every lie, every time you came home smelling like someone else's perfume. I never—" "Yes, you did. For years. And I stayed quiet because that's what wives do in this world. We smile. We play the part. We pretend we don't notice." She grabbed a bag from the closet and started throwing clothes into it. "Marcus noticed me. Actually saw me. Not as an accessory, not as a trophy. As a person. So you helped him try to kill me. So I helped him take what should have been mine all along." Victoria zipped the bag. "You want to know the truth? I don't regret it. The only thing I regret is that the plane didn't explode with you in it." Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. "You really hate me that much. I really hate what you turned me into, the lying, the scheming, the becoming exactly the kind of person I swore I'd never be." She looked him in the eye. "But yes, I hate you too." There wasn't much to say after that. They took Victoria to the van. She didn't scream, didn't fight, just sat in the back like she was being driven to a dinner party instead of a kidnapping. Elena was waiting by the van. "The sister?" "Sleeping pills in her wine earlier," Victoria said calmly. "She'll wake up tomorrow with a headache and no memory of me leaving. I made sure of it." Elena looked at Adrian. "She's cold." "I learned from the best," Victoria said. They drove back to the safe house in silence. When they arrived, Vincent zip-tied Victoria to a chair in the kitchen. She didn't protest, just sat there, waiting. Adrian made the call to Marcus from a burner phone. It rang 4 times before Marcus answered. "Adrian, I have Victoria." Silence. Then, "So?" "So I'm offering a trade, her for the product you stole, and your surrender." Marcus laughed. It was a harsh sound. "You think I'd trade my freedom for her?" "I think you care about her more than you're admitting. I cared about her when she was useful. Now she's a reminder of how badly I failed." Marcus's voice turned cold. "Keep her. Kill her. I don't care. She means nothing to me." "You're lying. I'm pragmatic. There's a difference." A pause. "You want to know the truth? Victoria was always a means to an end, a way to get close to you, a way to learn your weaknesses. She served her purpose. Now she's your problem." The line went dead. Adrian stared at the phone. Victoria was watching him from the chair. "I told you. He's bluffing." "He's not. Marcus doesn't bluff. He calculates." She shifted, trying to get comfortable despite the zip ties. "You miscalculated, Adrian. You thought his attachment to me would make him vulnerable, But he was using me the same way I was using you. We're all just pieces on the same board. Elena spoke up from the doorway. So what now? Adrian didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about the phone call, about Marcus's tone, about the fact that his plan had just fallen apart. Now we find another way. What other way? We're out of leverage. No, we're out of emotional leverage. But Marcus still wants something. He's still fighting for something. Power, Vincent said. Same thing everyone wants in this business. More than that, validation, respect. He spent 20 years in my shadow. He wants to prove he's better than me. Elena crossed her arms. How does that help us? Because men who want to prove something make mistakes. They take unnecessary risks. They get cocky. Adrian looked at Victoria. Did he ever mention a location? Somewhere he was planning to operate from? Victoria considered. There was a building, industrial district. He said it was perfect, hidden, close to the ports. Which industrial district? I don't know. Bayonne, maybe? I wasn't paying attention. Adrian looked at Elena. Can you narrow that down? Maybe. Give me an hour. She went back to her laptop. Adrian sat down across from Victoria. They stared at each other like strangers who'd once shared a life. Did you ever love me? Adrian asked quietly. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I loved who I thought you were, the successful businessman, the powerful man who could give me the life I wanted. But the real you, the killer, the criminal, the man who built an empire on blood? She shook her head. I don't even know if you loved yourself. I gave you everything. You gave me things. That's not the same as everything. What did you want that I didn't give you? Honesty, partnership, the feeling that I mattered more than just another asset to manage. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. I wanted to be your equal, Adrian, not your accessory. You could have told me. Would you have listened? Adrian didn't answer. They both knew the truth. Elena found the building an hour later. An old warehouse in Bayonne, registered to a shell company that traced back to Marcus's known associates. Perfect location, isolated, easy to defend. That's where he is, Adrian said, looking at the satellite images Elena had pulled up. You don't know that for sure. Yes, I do. It fits. It's exactly the kind of place Marcus would choose. Vincent leaned over the laptop. Even if you're right, you can't just walk in there. He'll have it fortified. Guards, weapons, probably traps. So we don't walk in. We smoke him out. How? Adrian thought about it, about Marcus's personality, about his need to win, to dominate, to prove he was better. We challenge him, publicly, make it about honor, about settling this like men instead of hiding in warehouses and hitting soft targets. Elena looked skeptical. He won't accept. He's not stupid. He will if I make it about reputation. If I make it about proving he's not a coward. Adrian pulled out his phone, started typing a message. I'm going to send this to every lieutenant, every captain, every soldier in the organization. By morning, everyone will know I called him out. He showed them the message. Marcus Kane, you want my empire. Meet me tomorrow, midnight. The old Renzo warehouse, just you and me. We end this. Vincent whistled. That's bold. That's necessary. He could bring an army. He won't, not if I frame it right, not if I make it about one-on-one combat, about proving who's the better man. And if you're wrong, then I die, but at least it'll be on my terms. Elena was watching him carefully. This is suicide. This is ending it, one way or another. Adrian? I'm tired, Elena. Tired of running. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of the game. He sent the message. Tomorrow night, it's over. Either I win and rebuild, or I lose and someone else takes over. But either way, this chapter closes. Nobody argued. What was there to say? The message spread through the organization like wildfire. By morning, every player in the underworld knew about the challenge. The reaction was mixed. Some thought Adrian was brilliant. Some thought he was insane. Most thought he was dead. Marcus didn't respond for 12 hours. Then, at noon, a message came back. Midnight, alone, no weapons, winner takes everything. Adrian showed it to Elena and Vincent. He agreed. Vincent said, sounding surprised. Of course he agreed. His ego wouldn't let him refuse. No weapons. You know he's lying, right? Of course he's lying. But so am I. Elena stood up. I'm coming with you. No. Yes. Elena, this is between me and Marcus. Nothing about this is just between you and Marcus. I'm in this now. You made me a partner, remember? She grabbed her jacket. I'll stay back. Stay hidden. But I'm not letting you walk into a trap alone. Adrian wanted to argue, but looking at her face, at the determination in her eyes, he knew it would be pointless. Fine, but you follow my lead. When have I not? Never. That's the problem. Despite everything, she smiled. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Vincent acquired weapons, compact, easy to hide, despite Marcus's no-weapons rule. Elena mapped escape routes from the Renzo warehouse, identifying exits and choke points. Adrian sat quietly, mentally preparing for what was coming. At 10 p.m., Victoria spoke up from her chair. She'd been quiet for hours. He's going to kill you. Adrian looked at her. Probably. And you're going anyway. Yes. Why? Because I'm tired of hiding, tired of strategizing, tired of existing in the space between life and death. Adrian stood. Tomorrow, I'm either alive or I'm done. There's clarity in that. Victoria studied him. You've changed. Death does that. You didn't die. Yes, I did. In that tunnel, watching you toast my murder, I died. What came back is something different. Better or worse? I don't know yet. At 11:30, they left for the warehouse. Elena drove. Vincent sat in back, checking weapons. Adrian sat in the passenger seat, watching the city pass by. Streetlights, closed businesses, the occasional pedestrian hurrying home. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that two crime lords were about to settle their war a few miles away. The Renzo warehouse was exactly as abandoned as Adrian remembered. He'd used it years ago for storage, back when he was first expanding into shipping. Then the building codes changed and it became more trouble than it was worth. He'd let it sit, forgotten. Now it was going to be a tomb, his or Marcus's, maybe both. They parked 2 blocks away. Elena handed Adrian a compact Glock. In your jacket, back waistband. He won't search there first. You're assuming I get close enough for him to search me. I'm assuming you're going to survive this. Adrian took the gun. Checked the magazine. 15 rounds. More than enough. Vincent handed him a knife. Ankle holster, insurance. You two are very determined to keep me alive. Someone has to be, Vincent said. You seem committed to getting yourself killed. Adrian hugged the old man. Quick, brief. If this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, the safe house is yours. Accounts are in your name. Take care of Elena. Adrian, just promise me. Vincent's eyes were wet. I promise. Elena walked with Adrian to the warehouse entrance. She was carrying a rifle, planning to post up on a nearby rooftop. Backup if things went sideways. Don't die, she said. I'll try not to. That's not good enough. It's all I can promise. She grabbed his arm, stopped him. I know I came here to kill you. I know I'm supposed to hate you. But somewhere along the way that changed. You're not a good man, Adrian, but you're honest about what you are. That counts for something. Elena, just don't die. Please. He nodded. I'll do my best. She let go and disappeared into the shadows. Adrian watched her go, then turned toward the warehouse. The main door was unlocked. Inside, the space was vast. Empty except for old crates and the smell of rust and decay. Moonlight came through broken windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. In the center of the space, standing under a single functioning light, was Marcus Kane. He looked different, thinner, harder. 3 days on the run had worn him down, but his eyes were sharp, focused, dangerous. You came, Marcus said. I gave my word. Your word. Like that means anything anymore. Adrian walked forward slowly, hands visible. We doing this or talking? Bit of both, I think. Marcus circled left. Adrian mirrored him. They moved like fighters sizing each other up. You know this doesn't end with one of us walking away, right? I know. One of us dies here tonight. That's the idea. Marcus smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I almost killed you once, should have made sure the job was finished. You made a lot of mistakes, Marcus. That was just one of them. My only mistake was underestimating how stubborn you are. I gave you everything, built this empire with you, bled with you, and you treated me like hired help. I treated you like a partner. Junior partner. There's a difference. Marcus pulled a gun from his jacket. So much for no weapons. You want to know the truth? I stopped being your friend years ago. I just didn't have the stones to do anything about it until Victoria came along. So this is her fault. This is your fault. For being blind. For being arrogant. For thinking loyalty was something you could buy with money and promises. Marcus aimed the gun. Any last words? Adrian didn't move, didn't reach for his own weapon. Yeah, one question. What? Was any of it real? The friendship, the brotherhood? Any of it? Marcus considered. In the beginning, maybe. But then you became successful, and I became your shadow. And shadows don't get empires. They get forgotten. So that's a no. That's reality. Marcus pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Adrian felt the impact, hot and immediate. He staggered back, fell. His hand went to his chest, expecting blood. But there was none. He'd moved at the last second. The bullet had grazed his shoulder instead of hitting center mass. Painful, but not fatal. Marcus swore and aimed again. The second shot never came. Elena's rifle cracked from somewhere above. Marcus's gun went flying, blown out of his hand by the impact. He screamed, clutching his bleeding palm. Adrian pulled the Glock from his waistband, got to his feet, aimed at Marcus. It's over! Marcus was on his knees, cradling his ruined hand. Blood dripped onto the concrete. So shoot me! Finish it! Adrian kept the gun steady. His shoulder was on fire, but his hand didn't shake. I should, but you won't. You're too weak. No, I'm just tired of killing people I used to care about. Then what? Exile again? Prison? You think I'm going to rot in a cell for you? No, said a voice from the shadows. Victoria walked out. She'd somehow gotten free of the zip ties, had somehow followed them, had a gun in her hand, Vincent's backup piece, probably stolen when they weren't looking. She was aiming it at Marcus. Victoria, Marcus said. His voice changed, softened. Don't. You said I meant nothing to you, that I was just a means to an end. I was lying. I had to say that to protect you. Liar. Her hand was shaking, but her voice was steady. You used me. Just like he used me. Just like everyone in this goddamn world uses everyone else. Victoria, please! She fired. The bullet hit Marcus in the chest. He fell backward, blood spreading across his shirt, his eyes wide with shock. Victoria dropped the gun, looked at Adrian. Now it's over. Adrian stared at his wife, his ex-wife, the woman who'd tried to have him killed, who'd betrayed him with his best friend, who'd just murdered that same friend. Why? He asked. Because I'm tired too. Tired of being a pawn, tired of letting men decide my fate. She looked at Marcus's body. He was my choice, my mistake, my kill. Elena appeared from the stairs, rifle still in hand. She looked at the scene, at Marcus bleeding out on the floor, at Victoria standing over him, at Adrian with a bullet graze in his shoulder. We need to leave, Elena said. Now, before someone heard those shots. They left. All three of them. Adrian, Elena, and the woman who'd tried to destroy him. They left Marcus Kane dying on a warehouse floor, alone in the dark. By morning, the news would spread. Marcus Kane was dead. Adrian Vance was alive. The war was over. And in the aftermath, nothing would ever be the same. Vincent was waiting at the van with a first aid kit and questions he didn't ask. He saw the blood on Adrian's shoulder, saw Victoria's hollow expression, saw the absence of Marcus, and understood everything without a word. He drove them back to the safe house while Elena kept watch out the rear window and Adrian pressed gauze against the bullet graze. Nobody spoke for the first 10 minutes. Then Victoria said, I killed him. I know, Adrian replied. I thought I'd feel different, vindicated or free or something. I just feel tired. That's how it works. She looked at him. You've killed people before. More than I can count. Does it get easier? No, you just get better at living with it. Victoria turned back to the window. I don't know how to live with any of this. They arrived at the safe house just after 1 a.m. Vincent helped Adrian inside while Elena swept the perimeter, checking for tails or surveillance. Nobody had followed them. The night was quiet except for distant sirens that had nothing to do with them. Inside, Vincent cleaned Adrian's wound while Adrian gritted his teeth and tried not to show how much it hurt. The bullet had carved a furrow through the meat of his shoulder but missed bone and major vessels. He'd be sore for weeks, but he'd live. You're lucky, Vincent said, applying antiseptic that burned like fire. Don't feel lucky. You're alive. Marcus isn't. In this business, that's the definition of luck. Adrian didn't argue. He was watching Victoria, who'd collapsed onto the couch and hadn't moved since. She was staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Elena sat across from her, silent, studying the woman who'd tried to destroy them both. What happens to her now? Elena asked quietly. I don't know. You can't let her walk. She knows too much. She just killed Marcus. That counts for something. Does it? Or did she just eliminate the one person who could contradict her story? Elena leaned forward. Think about it, Adrian. She played you for months. Played Marcus. She's a survivor. Maybe this is just another move. Victoria looked up. I can hear you. Good. Then tell us. Was shooting Marcus genuine or strategic? Does it matter? To me it does. Victoria laughed bitterly. You want the truth? I don't know. I was standing there watching him bleed from his hand, watching Adrian hold a gun on him, and I realized I hated them both. Marcus for using me, Adrian for never really seeing me, and I thought, why should either of them get to decide how this ends? So you decided, Adrian said. So I took control. For the first time in my life, I made the choice. I pulled the trigger. She looked at her hands again. And now I have to live with it. Elena stood. I need air. She walked out before anyone could respond. Adrian heard the back door open and close, heard her footsteps on the wooden deck Vincent had built last summer when he thought this place might become something more than a hideout. Vincent finished bandaging Adrian's shoulder and stepped back. You need rest. I need answers. Answers can wait until you're not bleeding. I'm not bleeding anymore. Then you need rest anyway. Vincent looked at Victoria. Both of you do. We'll figure out the next move in the morning. He left them alone. Adrian and Victoria sitting in the same room for the first time in days without zip ties or guns between them. Just two people who used to be married trying to figure out what they'd become. Do you remember our wedding? Victoria asked suddenly. Adrian blinked. What? Our wedding. Small ceremony. Your mother cried. My father got drunk and made that terrible toast. I remember. You told me that day that you'd always protect me, that I'd always be safe with you. She smiled sadly. I believed you. What changed? You did, or maybe I did, or maybe we both did and we were too stubborn to admit it. Victoria stood, walked to the window. We were good together once, weren't we? We were young together. That's different. Is it? Yeah, youth makes everything seem better than it is. Adds romance to things that are just convenient. Adrian watched her silhouette against the glass. We got married because it made sense. Your family had connections. Mine had money. We were building something. An empire. A life. Same thing in your world. Adrian couldn't argue that. In the life he'd chosen, there was no separation between personal and professional. Everything served the empire. Everyone was either an asset or a liability. Even wives, especially wives. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Victoria turned. For what? For not seeing you. For treating you like another piece on the board instead of a person. Adrian stood, wincing at the pain in his shoulder. You were right earlier. I gave you things. I didn't give you partnership. I didn't give you equality. I gave you a role and expected you to play it. And I did. For 12 years, I played it perfectly. Until you didn't. Until I couldn't anymore. She crossed her arms. Do you know what it's like to be invisible in your own life? To watch your husband build an empire and know you're just decoration? To realize that if you disappeared tomorrow, nothing would change except the seating chart at dinner parties? Victoria, Marcus saw me. Or I thought he did. Maybe Elena's right. Maybe he was just using me too, but at least he pretended I mattered. They stood there in silence. The clock on the wall ticked past 2 a.m. Outside, Adrian heard Elena's footsteps on the deck. She was pacing, processing, doing what she did when the world got too heavy. "What happens now?" Victoria asked. "That depends on you." "On me?" "You killed Marcus. That makes you a murderer in the eyes of the law. But in our world, it makes you something else. Someone who took power, someone who made a choice." Adrian walked closer. "You can run. Take money, disappear, start over somewhere far from here. Or you can stay. Help me rebuild. Be part of what comes next." Victoria stared at him. "You'd trust me? After everything?" "Trust is the wrong word. But I'd work with you, give you a chance to be more than you were." "Why?" "Because you earned it. You survived me, survived Marcus, survived this whole mess. That's worth something." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I need time. To think. To figure out who I am without someone telling me. Take all the time you need." Victoria walked to the door, stopped. "For what it's worth, I did love you. Once. Before everything got complicated." "I know." "Do you?" "Yeah. I felt it too." She left. Adrian heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard a bedroom door close, and then there was just silence and the weight of everything that had happened. Elena came back inside around 3 a.m. She found Adrian at the kitchen table, staring at a bottle of whiskey he'd poured but not drunk. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Don't want to. Every time I close my eyes, I see Marcus's face. Right before Victoria shot him. Guilt? Regret. There's a difference." Elena sat down across from him. "You want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." "Good, because I don't want to hear it." She poured herself a glass from his bottle. "We won. We survived. That's all that matters." "Is it? Isn't it?" Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd infiltrated his life to kill him, who'd saved him instead, who'd become something he didn't have a word for. Partner wasn't right, friend wasn't enough. Allie was too cold. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "I don't know. The plan was always to disappear after this was done. New life, new name, get as far from you and this world as possible. But somewhere along the way, disappearing started to feel like running, and I'm tired of running. So stay," Elena laughed. "Stay and do what? Be your bodyguard? Your advisor? Your pet assassin? Be my partner, real partner. Equal stake, equal say, equal power." She set down her glass. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Adrian, I came here to kill you. 6 months ago, I was planning how to make you suffer. You really want someone like that standing next to you?" "I want someone who's honest, someone who doesn't pretend to be something they're not, someone who I know will tell me the truth even when it hurts." Adrian leaned forward. "You're the only person in my life who never lied about their intentions. That's worth more than any oath of loyalty." Elena was quiet. Then she said, "What would that even look like? Partnership in a criminal empire?" "I don't know. We'd have to build it from scratch. New rules, new structure, something that doesn't collapse the second someone gets ambitious." "That's idealistic." "That's necessary. The old way failed. We need something different." "And you think I'm part of that something different?" "I think you already are." Elena studied his face, looking for the angle, the manipulation, the play. She wouldn't find one. Adrian meant every word. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "That's all I'm asking." They sat there drinking whiskey until dawn broke through the windows. Neither of them had answers. Neither of them had certainty. But they had time. And in a life where time was usually measured in bullets and betrayal, that felt like enough. The next 2 weeks were chaos. News of Marcus's death spread through the underworld like wildfire. Some people celebrated, some people mourned. Most people calculated what it meant for their own operations. Adrian held meetings every day, reasserting control, making it clear that the empire was his, and anyone who had a problem with that could leave or be removed. 4 lieutenants left voluntarily. Two tried to stage their own coups and were dealt with efficiently. The rest fell in line, recognizing that Adrian had done what Marcus couldn't, survived resurrection. Elena was there for all of it, not as decoration or support staff, but as an equal voice. At first, people didn't know what to make of her, the mysterious woman who'd appeared out of nowhere and stood at Adrian's side. But after she shut down a dispute between Rodriguez and Castellano with logic that made both men look like children, they started to respect her. After she personally handled a problem in Boston that Doyle couldn't solve, they started to fear her. That was fine. Fear and respect were the foundation of power in this world. Victoria stayed for a week, then left. Adrian gave her $5 million in cash and a new identity arranged through contacts in Toronto. She didn't say goodbye, just left a note on the kitchen counter that read, "Thank you for letting me choose." Adrian kept the note. He didn't know why. Vincent stayed on as advisor and friend because at 62 years old he wasn't about to start working for someone new. Plus, he liked Elena. Said she reminded him of his daughter before cancer took her in 2003. Elena didn't know how to respond to that, so she just made sure Vincent had good coffee and someone to argue with. By the end of the month, Adrian had restructured the entire organization. He eliminated the lieutenant system that had allowed Marcus to consolidate power. Instead, he created autonomous cells, each responsible for their own territory, but connected through a central council where decisions were made collectively. It wasn't perfect. There were still fights, still power struggles, still people who thought they deserved more than they had. But it was different. It was built on transparency instead of secrecy, on shared interest instead of blind loyalty. It was something Adrian could believe in. On a Tuesday in late November, Adrian and Elena stood on the rooftop of a building in Hoboken, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The city glittered like a promise, like something worth protecting. "You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't this?" Elena asked. "This? A crime lord, a killer, whatever we're calling it these days." Adrian considered. "I used to think about going legitimate, cleaning up my act, becoming respectable. And now? Now I think that's a fantasy. You can't wash off 18 years of blood with a business degree and good PR." He turned to her. "What about you? What would you be?" "I don't know. Before all this, I was just Elena Vale, daughter of a criminal, trying to figure out how to survive in a world that didn't care if I did. And now? Now I'm Elena Vale, partner to a crime lord, still trying to figure out how to survive. But at least now I've got resources." She smiled. "And pretty good company." "Pretty good?" "Don't push it." Adrian laughed. It felt strange. He couldn't remember the last time he'd genuinely laughed. Before Victoria's betrayal, before Marcus's coup, before his own funeral. It felt good. "I've been thinking," Elena said, "about what you said. Partnership, equal power, building something new. And I want in. Not because I need the money, not because I'm afraid of what happens if I leave, but because for the first time in my life, I'm part of something that feels like it could matter." Could matter? "We're still criminals, Adrian. We're not saving the world. We're just running it slightly better than the last guy." That's honest. That's realistic. Elena turned to face him. "But if we're doing this, we do it right. No more secrets. No more playing games with each other. We're partners or we're nothing." Adrian extended his hand. "Partners." Elena shook it. Her grip was firm. "Partners." They stood there on the rooftop as the sun set over the city they'd fought to control. Below them, 8 million people were living their lives, completely unaware that the power structure governing their underworld had just fundamentally changed. Two people who should have been enemies had become allies. A maid who'd wanted revenge had become a queen. A dead man had become a king reborn. And together they were building something that might actually last. 3 months later, Adrian held another meeting. But this one was different. This time, every major player in the East Coast underworld was there. Not because they feared him, because they were curious. Adrian Vance was proposing something unprecedented. He stood at the head of the table in a conference room he'd rented under a false name, looking at the faces of men and women who'd spent decades fighting each other for scraps. "I'm not asking for your loyalty," Adrian said. "I'm not demanding territory. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm proposing a new system." Castellano spoke up. What kind of system? One where we stop bleeding each other dry over street corners and percentage points, where we collaborate instead of compete, where we build something sustainable instead of just profitable. Doyle snorted. That's naive. That's evolution. We've been running this business the same way for 50 years, fighting the same fights, losing the same people, making the same mistakes. Adrian looked around the room. I'm proposing we try something different. Like what? Rodriguez asked. Like an actual organization, not families competing for dominance, not lieutenants waiting to betray their bosses. A structure where everyone has a voice, where decisions are made collectively, where power is shared instead of hoarded. The room erupted in arguments. Some people thought Adrian was crazy. Some thought it was a trap. Some just wanted to hear more. Elena stood up. The room quieted. You all know who I am, she said. I'm the woman who infiltrated Adrian's house to kill him, who watched his empire crumble from the inside, who helped him take it back. She looked at each of them. I have no reason to trust him, no history of loyalty, no obligation to help him succeed. Then why are you here? Someone asked. Because he's right. The old system is broken. It rewards betrayal, punishes innovation, creates wars instead of wealth. Elena gestured to Adrian. He came back from the dead, literally. He could have taken power by force, could have eliminated everyone who betrayed him, could have ruled through fear. Instead, Castellano asked, instead he's asking you to choose, to be part of something new, or to keep doing things the old way and watch the empire eat itself. Silence. Then Castellano spoke. I'm in. Doyle nodded slowly. Me too. One by one, they agreed. Not everyone. Some people left. Some people would always choose the old ways because that's all they knew. But enough stayed, enough to make it work. Adrian and Elena spent the next year building the new organization. They called it the Collective. Not because it was democratic, it wasn't, but because it recognized that power shared was power multiplied. There were setbacks. There were fights. There were people who tried to exploit the new system for personal gain, but there were also successes. Territories that had been at war for decades found common ground. Operations that had been bleeding money became profitable. People who'd spent their lives looking over their shoulders started to relax. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. It was still a criminal enterprise built on illegal activity and moral compromise. But it was better than what came before. On a spring evening 2 years after his resurrection, Adrian stood in the same cathedral where he'd crashed his own funeral. This time he was there for a different reason. The cathedral had been rented for a private event. No press, no publicity, just the people who mattered. Elena walked down the aisle in a dress that wasn't white because white seemed dishonest for people like them. She looked beautiful, fierce, real. She reached the altar where Adrian waited. Vincent stood next to him as best man, crying openly because he'd reached the age where crying at weddings was acceptable. The ceremony was short. No mention of vows that neither of them believed in. No promises of forever because forever was a fantasy in their world. Just a simple exchange. A recognition that they'd chosen each other. That they'd built something together worth protecting. When it was over, they walked out of the cathedral hand in hand. Partners in every sense of the word. Behind them, the empire they'd rebuilt hummed with quiet efficiency. Not perfect. Not without problems. But stable, sustainable, something that might actually last beyond the next betrayal. Later that night, lying in bed in the house they'd bought together in a neighborhood where nobody knew their real names, Elena asked, "Do you think we're good people?" Adrian considered the question. No. That's honest. We've killed people, broken laws, built wealth on the suffering of others. We're not good people. But maybe we're less bad than we were. Maybe we're building something that will be less bad than what came before. Adrian turned to look at her. That's not redemption, but it's something. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I spent 6 months planning to kill you. I studied your routine, learned your weaknesses, imagined every way I could make you suffer. I know. And now I'm married to you. How did that happen? You chose revenge. Then you chose something different. Then you kept choosing every day to be here. Adrian brushed hair from her face. That's how it happened. Do you ever regret it? Coming back? Fighting for all this? Every day. But I do it again. Why? Because the alternative was staying dead. And I've learned that being alive, even when it's complicated and messy and hard, is better than any alternative. Elena kissed him. You're getting philosophical in your old age. I'm not old. You're older than you were. Fair point. They lay there in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of betrayal and somehow built something worth keeping. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. People lived, people died, people fought and loved and survived. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Adrian Vance, the man who came back from the dead, was building something that might outlast him. Not because it was perfect, not because it was good, but because it was honest about what it was and didn't pretend to be anything else. In the end, that was all anyone could ask for. A chance to build something real in a world full of beautiful lies. A chance to choose who you became instead of accepting who circumstances made you. Adrian had been given a second life when he walked out of that tunnel. He'd used it to destroy his enemies, reclaim his empire, and build something new. But more than that, he'd used it to become someone different. Not better, necessarily, but more honest, more aware, more intentional about the choices he made and the consequences they carried. The maid who'd been told to stay silent had become the most powerful voice in the room. The king who'd been killed had returned stronger than before, and together they'd rewritten the rules of power. Not forever. Nothing lasted forever in their world. But for now, it was enough. For now, they'd won. And in a life measured in survival rather than success, winning meant waking up each morning and choosing to keep fighting. That was the only truth Adrian knew anymore. The only truth that mattered. He fell asleep next to Elena, thinking about tomorrow's meetings and next week's problems and all the challenges that came with building an empire on new foundations. But for the first time in years, he slept without nightmares. And that, more than anything else, felt like victory.